All right, and welcome to episode 58 of WCAT Chats, and we have an anchor, an advocate, and a Westminster legend, Miss Lauren Dhue. Miss Lauren Dhue, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here. Go Wildcats!
So coming back to Westminster, what's it like back on your old stomping grounds?
I don't recognize most of the campus. We were just talking about how this building, Askew Hall, is like the only original building left. I don't recognize the campus. It's incredible. It's bigger than a college campus. Some of the buildings are blowing my mind. But in general, it's great to be back here. And I'm so happy to be in the Wildcat studios talking to y'all today. This is great.
And now looking back at your 4 years at the Westminster High School, what helped influence you to go into the broadcasting world?
Well, I tell you, I've always been a performer my whole life. I think my mother said I came out of the womb performing. I was kind of a ham when I was a younger kid, and I did a lot of plays and musicals here at Westminster. So I think I always kind of had it in me. I think I knew that I was going to do something in the entertainment world. And then I became really interested in news. So after I had my first internship at CNN when I was 19, I sort of put the performing and the entertainment plus the news together. And so CNN ended up being a perfect place for me to work, and then I ended up getting on camera.
That sounds great. Can you tell us about how attending UNC influenced your career path?
Sure. So yeah, I went to UNC Chapel Hill. I loved it there. Very different experience being on such a big college campus compared to Westminster. But I knew that that would give me an opportunity to have a different experience. And during college, I made sure that I still had all these internships at CNN during my summers to kind of keep me active in the news business. And so when I graduated, it was kind of easy. I just went straight to CNN the week after I graduated from Carolina.
But looking at your college experience, you majored in political science with a minor in dramatic arts. Can you sort of explain to us how, knowing you were going into journalism, you still chose to not major in journalism?
Exactly. Well, it was interesting. Some of the people who worked at CNN told me that I did not necessarily need to major in journalism. They said, why don't you get a good liberal arts education, maybe major in political science, so you will understand the ins and outs of politics and how our political systems work. And then, of course, I was still interested in acting and singing, so I had the dramatic arts minor. So for me, this was kind of a perfect blend of a couple of different areas that I was interested in. And really and truly, I don't think it mattered what I majored in as long as I enjoyed what I was studying in school.
And you mentioned earlier your first internship, you got tossed in practically immediately into the presidential debates. What was it like getting that experience off the rip?
Yeah, it was awesome off the rip. It was the 1988 presidential election. Decades before you were born. Yes, I'm old, but that's okay. 88 election. I was an intern during the Democratic National Convention here in Atlanta, and I was a booth runner, so I got to do everything. I got to take the scripts to the anchors. I had to make coffee. I had to straighten the ties of the news anchors. I got to do like a little bit of everything, and some of it was what you would call grunt work, like not very glamorous. Taking food to the anchors, making them coffee or whatever, but I learned everything because I kept my eyes open and my ears open, and I learned so much. And after that internship, when I saw how a political convention worked, and I was able to get my hands on everything, I said, this is what I want to do. I'm interested in politics, I'm interested in news, and I think I'm going to go for it.
And after you learned about your ambitions and your goals after becoming the youngest CNN anchor in history, what was that like?
Well, it was kind of hard to believe when it actually happened. When you have a goal, I know all of you have goals, and when you finally achieve a goal, you're kind of like, oh, wow, this is happening. I can't believe it. So it was something that I've been working towards for a couple of years. And I started not on CNN, but I started anchoring on something called the Airport Channel, which does not exist anymore. But it was a CNN channel that was only on in airports. So I think they thought, well, she's not very experienced. We'll just put her on the Airport Channel. Nobody except in airports will see her. Then they stuck me on an overnight shift So I went to work at 11 o'clock at night. They stuck me on TV in the middle of the night so no one would see me. And that's how I got my experience. And then so when it was time for me to actually anchor on CNN, I was ready. So it's kind of a fun evolution.
That's great. Did you experience any big challenges being a woman in broadcasting?
I certainly did, and thank you so much for asking me that. That's a big one. I think sometimes it's challenging for women anyway, but especially it's very competitive in the news industry, especially for women, because not only do we have to do everything that men do, but we kind of have to look good doing it. And maybe that's something that's not as important as it was when I was anchoring. Our appearance was very important a long time ago. I think it's less important now, thank goodness. But women tend to put more pressure on themselves than men do. Maybe you feel that way as a teenage young woman. Young women tend to put more pressure on themselves. So that, and also, I think this is changing, but young women and women have to work harder to be taken seriously. So I always felt, boy, I'm an attractive woman. Maybe people aren't taking me seriously. Maybe they don't think I'm smart. So I'm going to work extra hard to prove to people that I am smart and that I have what it takes to be here and I have earned my place as a national anchor on this network. Mm-hmm. But it's very stressful. For sure, but you grow into the stress, and it's like any other business. No matter if you go into news or any other business, you kind of grow into it. You get used to it, and then you realize, oh gosh, I've been doing this for a while. It's not so stressful anymore.
Right.
So you talked about how you were able to find your calling like really early on with an internship. You know, what would you say for people who are going into college now, sort of like me, who don't really know what they want to focus on?
That is okay. If you don't know your senior year of high school what you want to do not panic. I was lucky enough after my sophomore year in college to realize what I wanted to do, and that was to get into broadcast journalism. But my suggestion is, if there's something that you love senior year in high school or, you know, heading into college, try to find an internship, like next summer when you are heading into college or after your freshman year. What have you enjoyed your freshman year of college? What are the kinds of things that really piqued your curiosity? Try to line up an internship so that you can get that hands-on experience in the building, on the ground, and then volunteer to do whatever they want you to do. Don't say no to anything, even if you think, oh, I don't want to work till 11 o'clock. I don't want to make coffee. This is beneath me. This is very demeaning. Don't ever say no, because you never know what that could lead to. You might be making coffee for somebody and you think, this stinks. That person might introduce you to somebody else, and the next thing you know, you might be working for the president of a company. You just don't know. So make the most of your opportunities.
And looking back on your capitalizing on those opportunities, are there any people that you initially were way under, but they eventually recognized what you were doing for them, for the company, and they helped you, give you a boost?
Yes, for sure. So the former president of CNN, a guy named Tom Johnson, who retired a while ago, saw some potential in me. Before I was on camera, I was a behind-the-scenes producer, and I basically wore him down. I said, you have got to put me on camera. I know what I'm doing. I'm smart. I know how to write questions. I know that I would interview people. I know I would do a great job. And so I basically wore him down until he gave me a chance. I said, please believe in me. And he did, and it changed everything.
And then talking about experience, you've worked at 3 major news stations. You got Fox News, MSNBC, and then also CNN. What's it like seeing the world from all those different perspectives?
Well, they were 3 different perspectives and 3 very different management companies running these different networks. And now, when I got into news, those 3 networks, it was just CNN for a long time. Then MSNBC and Fox News joined the fray. And for the longest time, they weren't so delineated. So now Fox News leans to the right, CNN and MSNBC lean to the left. So it's kind of a dichotomy. Now you're looking at really different news perspectives. So it was kind of interesting working for these very different networks. What I hope is that there will be less opinion and more just the facts in the future, if we can get to a place where some of the networks rely less on the opinion and more just focusing on what's actually happening, that would be my dream. If I could create my own news network, it would be sort of going back to the way CNN was when it was created about 45 years ago.
And looking back to your years in front of the camera, would you say there was a specific story or even just a special moment that you really kind of culminated your years?
Yes, so this happened before you all were born, but I was on the air when 9/11 happened, the 9/11 attacks. And that was a very scary day for every single American, and especially for those of us living in New York City. We did not know what was going on. We just knew that our city was under attack. In those first few hours when we did not know that Al-Qaeda was responsible, we just thought that buildings were going to keep coming down. We were all terrified, but we all came into the newsroom and said, okay, what can we do? And so some of us went on the air right away. Some of us were sent home to rest because we knew that we were going to be on the air 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I was actually sent home to sleep. I couldn't, of course, because the world was literally blowing up. And then I came back and I did an overnight shift. So I worked kind of a midnight to 4 a.m. shift for a while. And then about a year into it, I was sent to the Middle East several times to report during the war on terror. And I actually found myself held at gunpoint by the Hamas terror group, who are back in the news now, given the conflict that's going on in Gaza. You're reading a lot about Hamas. Well, I met some Hamas leaders, and they held me at gunpoint during the war on terror. So you never know what's going to happen as a journalist, and that's kind of what made it exciting. But I would say that the 9/11 attacks and the years that followed were kind of, you know, the things that they were my biggest stories for sure.
Being an anchor on WCAT's Weekly News Today, I'm working on trying to preserve, or I guess show my personality on camera.
Good.
What advice would you give to anchors and other reporters on kind of preserving their uniqueness?
Be yourself. And sometimes that's hard when you are dealing with facts. You're obviously not going to make anything up, but let your personality show. I remember when I was first anchoring, I was so nervous. I was very stiff. I was afraid to smile at the camera. I was afraid to look at the camera. Don't be afraid. And then somebody was coaching me early on and saying, just look at the camera as if it's a friend. Imagine your boyfriend or a good friend or maybe your mom. And so that really helped me sort of open up and treat the camera as a friend. Mm-hmm. And, you know, don't be afraid to imbue some of your personality in there. You know, if you have a feeling about a story, that's okay. You can have a feeling about it, as long as you stick to the facts, and you definitely want to stick to the facts. But if there is time to give your thoughts on something, don't be afraid to do that. But most importantly, be yourself. Try not to be stiff. I think anchors do a pretty good job these days. Back in the day, everything was very stiff and nobody's hair moved. And you know, now I think it's a little more casual, mm-hmm. which is good.
A little bit earlier, you were telling us about like telling a story, like putting the facts together. Can you sort of elaborate a little bit on that and like
Sure.
how you go about doing that as someone who works in the news?
Sure. So what's great now is that you have the facts at your fingertips, literally on these laptops. We have them here on our phones. You can Google anything. So let's say you get a story, maybe it's about the election coming up. Maybe it's, okay, what are Atlantans saying about the election? Let's go to a polling place on election day and talk to voters. So you would line everything up, you would find a polling place online, you would do a little research to see what Democrats are saying, what Republicans are saying. Maybe there's some independents out there who you can talk to. You would make all the arrangements, you would do your research, and then you would show up at the polling place. You would interview people from both sides. Very important not to just tell one side of a story, right? You got to interview Republicans, Democrats, then you might interview somebody who works at the polling station. Then you might interview someone walking down the street who might give you a different perspective on things. So you're going to want to tell all aspects of a story. Make sure you don't leave anything out. So that's just one quick example of how to tell a story. Make it interesting. If you're bored when you're writing it, then the audience is going to be bored watching it. So make sure you have something interesting to say.
And while I love getting to get all this great advice from you, that's not the only reason why you're here at Westminster. Could you let the audience know what you're doing back specifically today and tomorrow?
Sure, and thank you for asking me about that. So one of the reasons I am on campus this week is to talk about my struggle with alcoholism and drug addiction. So, when I left Westminster and I went to UNC for college, as I mentioned earlier, and I developed some very bad drinking habits when I was in college. And unfortunately, those drinking habits only got worse as I moved into adulthood, moved to New York City, and then got involved in the news industry. So I developed very serious alcoholism as an adult. And then, unfortunately, I also used drugs from time to time. And it almost ruined my life, and I almost died because of my substance use. But the good news is I didn't die. Obviously, I'm here. I got sober in 2007, so that means I've been sober for 17 years, and now I travel around the country. I've spoken at the White House twice. I have spoken everywhere I've been invited to educate people about the dangers of underage drinking, vaping, substance use. It's one of the reasons I'm on campus, is to talk to all you great students about how dangerous it is for your brains and bodies. So encouraging you, look, we have to be realistic. I know you're probably gonna have a beer every once in a while, but my role here is to serve as a cautionary tale. I don't want you to end up falling into the trap that I did, and I drank until I was 38 years old. I don't want you to fall into that trap. So I am here as an example of what not to do. So it's just a privilege to be able to share my story as a Westminster alum and to let people know you have so much support here. The teachers care about you, the coaches care about you, and care about each other. Take care of each other. And I know I'm really gonna sound like an old lady, but I don't care. Drinking, smoking, using drugs does not make you cool. It just doesn't. Take my word from it, I was not cool. I wanted to fit in, I wanted to be cool, and I wasn't. It ended up almost ruining my life. So that's why I'm here, to share all of these messages.
And you obviously have a large role in the organization called The Real. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and its mission and its impact?
Sure, thank you. So it's called recoveryeducation.com, Real, Recovery, Education, and Applied Learning. We have created a website that educates parents about drugs and alcohol because we believe that parents have such an important role in helping their kids learn about drugs and alcohol. We also sometimes wonder, do parents know everything they need to know about alcohol, about vaping, about fentanyl? Do they know that they need to have Narcan in the house? Narcan, by the way, reverses the effects of an opioid overdose. It's here everywhere on Westminster campus, which is great. It needs to be in every household. Do parents know these kinds of things? We also help parents learn how to talk to their kids, not to shame or blame or tell their kids they're bad if they do drink or use drugs, but rather to have the conversation, we love you, we support you, we want you to achieve your dreams and your goals. And the best way to do that is to stay away from substances. So we really know the importance that parents have in your lives. And by the way, don't be afraid of your parents. You can talk to them. They love you and they care about you. The important thing is that addiction is a family disease. It runs in families. It runs in my family. So there is a genetic component to it. And addiction runs in family, and so the whole family has to talk about it. We can't keep it a secret.
And throughout your personal journey, how did you find different support structures, and how do you advise other people to do the same?
Thank you for asking that. So when I decided that I needed when I decided I needed to get sober, I thought I was the only person in the world. I was so scared. I was like, oh my gosh, is there anybody else going through this? And I lived in New York City at the time, and I realized, wait a minute, there are millions of other people who want to be sober just the way I do. So I got involved in an organization called Alcoholics Anonymous, AA, which you might have heard about. It is a 12-step group that I've now been a part of for 17 years. It saved my life. It is a place for people suffering from all kinds of different addictions. It can be alcohol, it can be drugs. There's something called Overeaters Anonymous for people who have food issues. There's Gamblers Anonymous. There are all kinds of 12-step programs for people to come in and share their experiences and then learn from others. So it's a mutual self-help group, right? It's like peer support at Westminster. If you're going through something, you get a lot of help by talking to other students. Same thing, when I go to an AA meeting, I get to be in a room with other people who are going through exactly what I'm going through. So AA has been big for me. Churches can be very supportive. You can talk to your minister, your rabbi, your imam, whoever. If you are in a place of worship, that can be a great resource. Obviously, there are therapists, psychiatrists, and psychologists involved. And I have a lot of friends who help me too. So most of my friends don't have alcohol problems, but they support what I'm doing, and they know that I will never take another drink, and they won't let me either. So they love me enough to say, no, 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 and we're going to support you forever. So there is a ton of help out there available. And for any student who might be watching this, you're not alone. The school wants to help you, your parents want to help you, and I am happy to help you, and the school knows how to reach me. So.
And if you're okay with sharing it, what was the point where you realized you need to go reach out for help? And then giving advice for other people, what would you say they should start realizing, maybe I do need to reach out to other people to help me control what's happening?
Well, I think for me it got really bad, and I felt like I could not function without alcohol. And it was weird because I was on national television at the time, so I had this big job with a lot of responsibility. But because of my insecurity and my need to feel important and my need to feel popular even then, and I had the genetic component, and I had some mental health problems, meaning I was deeply depressed. All those were reasons why I kept drinking. And so I started drinking to the point where it started making me physically sick. And I thought, you know what, if I keep drinking, I'm going to die. And then, of course, I was dabbling in some drugs, and that also made the situation much worse. So I literally woke up one day and said, I have a lot to lose. I have this big TV career. I have a family who loves me. I have friends who love me. I have a great life. I don't want to die. So I talked to my doctor, and my doctor said, let me help you. So we started having a conversation, and then he said, why don't you try an AA meeting? And then the second part of your question, when someone doesn't feel good, they should not stay silent. So if there are any kids here who don't feel good, don't keep it a secret. Please tell somebody. You're not alone. You will not be shamed. You will not be blamed. And just kind of in general moving forward, as you all go to college and go into your adult life, you're going to meet people who struggle. Let them know that you're there to talk to. Let them know that they are not alone and that you want to support them. Because believe me, you're going to meet people in your life. It may affect someone in your family someday. What I always say is all these conversations that I have here at Westminster and all over the country, every single family I talk to has someone who's experienced it or a friend who's experienced it. So the important thing is don't stay quiet about it. Please reach out and ask for help.
And with your media background, how were you able to become an advocate for all that you've been through and just get it out to the public about everything that you have noticed?
Well, I had a platform because I was on TV. So I'm really, really lucky because I was already a public persona. So for me, I didn't plan on going public at first, but someone broke my anonymity. So in other words, without my permission, somebody went online and told my story and said, oh, Lauren Dhue, the news anchor, is an alcoholic. And I was devastated because I had not given that person permission to tell my story. So it broke on the internet and I was horrified. But then I realized, wait a minute, I have the opportunity to now become a national advocate, and I'm going to help so many people. And that was 15 years ago, and I know I have helped a lot of people. So I already had a platform, and then I realized, okay, I'm going to take this platform and I'm going to expand it now. So that's how all the advocacy started.
And we thank you for that.
Oh,
and
sure.
it's the way we end every single podcast with the same question.
Okay.
If you could give your younger self or someone kind of coming up in the ranks a piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't drink. Don't use drugs. Don't ever start. You know, I realize that is not a happy message. But to me, that's what I would tell myself. Maybe one of the other messages I would say is, do not worry about being popular. It doesn't matter. You're great just the way you are, and I was great. But in my need to be one of the cool kids, I thought I had to drink. I thought I had to get involved in that other stuff. You know, my important message to Westminster kids is, you're great the way you are. You're beautiful. You're smart. Go with you. Be you. Don't worry about being somebody else, and certainly don't worry if somebody else likes you, because what other people think of you is none of your business. There you have it. Go Wildcats.
Well, Ms. Dhue, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come visit us. I know personally all the advice you gave was really helpful, and I know it painted a little bit more of the path for me. And then also the rest of your message, I know it resonated with me. Hopefully it resonated with you guys back at home, and I can't wait for your speech tomorrow with the rest of our
You better
high
be
school.
there. I'm going to take attendance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great job.